Welcome to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan.
I thought we had defined roles on this podcast, Sudeep. I'm the one who's supposed to be ranting, and your topic today sounds like a rant.
Okay, I can also take turns, but this is not about ranting. This is about possibly sometimes taking an opportunity
Huh?
to talk about what marketers shouldn't do, while we always talk about what marketers should ideally be doing.
Fair enough. When I do that, it's called a rant.
That is because you make it sound like one.
Right. So, what exactly shouldn't marketers do? Where are we starting from?
So we're starting from what I call as marketing bloopers,
Mm-hmm.
and with specific focus on what I call as loopers.
Loopers. I've seen the movie Looper, but what exactly do you mean by loopers?
Okay, I've not seen this movie though. So this is a term I just made up to make it rhyme with bloopers. But let me try and define. Yeah, we've spoken about this in the past when we spoke about immersing with consumers and how to work out your proposition, etc.
Right.
Where we said that ideally marketers should go and meet consumers. Too often, one of the mistakes that marketers make is that they think that their brand is the center of the universe and the
Mhm.
consumer's life revolves around it. Yeah,
That's because the marketer's life revolves around the brand. We
correct.
really wish consumers' lives also revolved around the same brand.
Correct. So too often we then start classifying consumers as core consumers, fringe consumers, infrequent consumers, etc. So therefore, our whole worldview, consumer view, becomes brand out.
Right.
Yeah. Now, it'll always serve marketers very well to remember that they have to view a brand consumer out and not a consumer brand out. Yeah.
Perfect.
So
It's the role the brand plays in the consumer's life and the
correct.
consumer plays in the brand's life.
Yeah, I think consumer would always have a pivotal role in brand's life. It is the brand that struggles to figure out its role. And too
Exactly.
often it is quite marginal and we find it difficult to reconcile with it. But the sooner we do, the better it is for our sanity. So,
Right.
so therefore, with this spirit, uh, marketers have since time immemorial committed to this folly of creating loopers. And
Hmm.
when I say loopers, they tend to create this world, brand world, where everything is about the brand, and they seem to create so many loops and layers that they think the consumer will enjoy once they enter that world.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you give me
Uh,
an example?
yes.
Struggle to
So,
place
couple
one.
of uh, examples of this, from the olden days also, are where consumers create microsites
Hmm.
or Facebook pages. Yeah.
Okay.
So therefore, you will find that too often brands are quite self-indulgent. Uh, they'll
Always.
they'll create a microsite to say that okay, this is what we want to deliver to the consumer. So we'll bring all the consumers in the world to this microsite, and the consumer will jump through hoop one, and then we will reel them into hoop two, and then we will make them go through hoop three, and then the consumer will really get what they really came for. And by this time, the realization and the truth of the world, which is my brand proposition, would have dawned on them, and hence I would have satisfied my brand objective, right? So we make consumer jump through so many loops. Yeah.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I mean, given that you're taking the rant role, I'll take the self-deprecative role here.
Huh.
So back when I was on Oreo,
Huh.
we ran a campaign which was conceived in the US, in
Mm,
my defense,
mm,
then rolled out in India,
mm,
called Play with Oreo.
mm,
So somebody in the US said people are consuming too much Oreo anyway.
mm,
The only way we're going to sell more Oreos is by getting people to waste it.
mm,
And they said Play with Oreo
mm,
was a big campaign from the US.
mm,
I'm sure you remember it.
mm,
So when we did that in India, it was absolute nonsense. We
mm.
said people don't play with food. It's looked down upon and we're selling to mothers. But we did that, and we set up sites, microsites, as you just said, where people could play games with Oreo. And we said, this is the journey they're going to take through the site. They're going to play this game and this game. They will win these points, these cookie points. And it was complete nonsense. Very few people came to the website.
Yeah.
The activation did nothing for the brand, but we did manage to win some awards for the campaign.
That's always the case with big brands. But yeah, that is exactly what I meant about self-indulgence, and I've been guilty
Mhm.
of doing a couple of such things in the past. And so therefore, marketers have to be careful about these loopers, right?
Hmm.
These are what I called as loopers or infinity loops, which can really turn into bloopers if you're not careful about them. And
Right.
so therefore today's episode very succinctly was about trying and avoiding these loopers, and
Mhm.
giving marketers 4 or 5 key pointers as to how they can avoid them.
Fine.
So the first thing that I usually tell other my brand managers and my team members, etc., is don't create a parallel world. Be where the consumer is, right?
What does that mean?
Too often in our endeavor to make consumer go through loops designed by us, we take them to a microsite or a different page or a different landing page, etc., etc. More often than not, some of the most successful campaigns I've seen are where goes where the consumer is. So if the consumer is
Mhm.
on Instagram, do something on Instagram where the consumer does not leave the platform, interacts with you there and moves out, right?
Right. So there's no effort needed by the consumer to engage with the brand in the first
Correct.
place.
Correct. So that becomes one. So therefore, from a play with Oreo point of view, if there are sites where consumers anyways are going to go play games or find something to really bond with their children, etc., it is better to do an activity there, have some Oreo branded games there, rather than getting
Right.
them to an Oreo branded page or an
Right.
Oreo page of games, right?
Yep. So exactly, we did the wrong
Yeah,
thing here. We had people on Facebook click a link and go to a microsite and play games on that
correct.
site where they had no business
Correct.
being.
So now every click, and now marketers are aware about this, every click leads to some amount of drop off. Yeah.
Yeah.
And therefore, with your CTRs already in single digits, and then
Hmm.
60-70% people bouncing off once they reach there, you're already talking about 70-80% of the TG lost, right? So
Right.
therefore, the numbers are there to speak, but from a marketing standpoint, be where the consumer is. Don't lead them to your parallel universe
Yeah.
or metaverse, whatever you might want to call it.
It just increases
Correct.
friction, and the whole job of ours is to reduce that friction for
Correct.
engagement.
Now,
Perfect.
uh, let's be clear about this. If you're wanting to deliver some proposition, you are asking the consumer to take some additional effort, do something, right?
Hmm.
So therefore, you'll only be able to do this if you promise consumer something, some reward, right? Some kind
Hmm.
of emotional, physical, some kind of reward or recognition to them, right? And it'll come
Right.
from some core premise that you will promise them, right? So come here,
Hmm.
have fun, right? Come here
Hmm.
and be on the leaderboard. Come here and get the bragging rights, right? Come here
Right.
and look cool. So you promise them something, yeah. So therefore, we have to be very clear about our core premise as to why the consumer is going to step into this particular loop of yours or a small activity of yours. It has to be
Right.
interesting and enticing enough for the consumer and fertile enough for the brand to create an activity around it and really do it in a branded manner. So therefore, having the core premise very clear, and premise has to be intriguing, interesting enough for the consumer. The third one is, now that your core premise is the promise, the consumer came there.
Mhm.
Now, one of the biggest mistake that marketers make is that they make the consumer go through too many hoops or loops before they fulfill the promise. So early
Right.
fulfillment is the key, right? Let the
Hmm.
fulfillment be in sight, and then that what that does is it really makes the consumer feel that whatever time and effort they have spent thus far is not wasted, is justified. And then if the consumer feels happy, satisfied, etc., they might check out few other loops of yours, right? But if you're
Hmm.
really delaying the fulfillment, you are actually risking that the consumer would immediately flip out, and they're not going to stay on your page, your game, or whatever you want them to do.
That's a sticky
Yeah,
factor, right? Because the moment they've
yeah,
gotten something, they want to stay on and find out if they can
correct,
get more of it
correct.
at least.
Yeah,
Fair
but
enough.
it has to
Right.
link back to the premise, right? Don't keep them waiting for too
Hmm.
long, right? uh, the
Right.
fourth bit in this one is effortless branding. Now, let's be
Hmm.
clear about all of this. Any brand would do it because they want some kind of branding, some kind of proposition to land, right? Now,
Right.
making it effortless, making it seamless, making it very natural is the key, right? You do it too
Hmm.
much and you turn the consumer away. You do it uh, too badly, or you don't do it well, you will end up delivering some benefit to the consumer, and consumer will not remember your brand at all. Either ways, your
Right.
objectives are not going to get fulfilled. So therefore, getting that
Right.
balance right, not being too greedy about your brand being everywhere there, but if your brand is truly integrated into the core premise or the fulfillment, then you've hit the jackpot.
Right. So I'll give you a good example I remember, which
Hmm.
most people might not. This was when
Hmm.
ISL started. So ICL,
ACL,
Indian Cricket
ICL,
League.
huh?
ICL started. So they had real juice sponsor their boundaries. I was just watching the match and it was just some angel investing six or something. It just made no sense. It is a force-fitted brand for this. So this Dabur ka real juice, it said every boundary was a real boundary. That's a real shot. That's a real four. And that kind of made it just locked
Hmm.
in so much
Hmm.
better. And this is way back. And why I say this is because Oreo was about the bonding between the
Yeah.
father and the child. And the entire play with Oreo was about children playing, not even children, teenagers playing with
Oh,
Oreo
okay.
and wasting it. So it had no fitment with the
So
Oreo
in
narrative in
fact,
India.
come to think of it, if the execution was around, for example, if the whole
Hmm.
communication was around father and kid bonding. Now, Play with Oreo was in the
Hmm.
space where a father could bond with their kids while playing a game. Then Oreo
Right.
effortlessly fits there. So you're getting them to play the game. Oreo is just
Absolutely.
the device, but it's a branded device.
Hmm. That becomes the
Correct.
effortless branding you're
Correct.
talking about.
So that becomes the fourth one. And the fifth one is that I also understand that why marketers would design other loops. Each loop makes a greater effort at delivering branding or proposition, which is fine. But
Hmm.
it is very critical for a marketer to be aware of what all are the core and what all is peripheral. So
How do
very
I tell the
simply,
difference?
your core actually is centered around the premise why the consumer came there and what fulfillment you're
Hmm.
going to offer. Now that the
Right.
insight, the
The
core
insight.
insight, and the fulfillment of it, and the fulfillment has to
Hmm.
have some kind of a branding element associated with it, right? If you're only
Right.
reliant on your peripherals to deliver the branding, then there is a problem, right? I'll give you an example.
Hmm.
Too often, brands that have celebrity endorsement face this problem, right? Now,
Yes.
one of the core premise is that you come to us and you get a chance to interact with the celebrity, click a picture with the celebrity, etc. Unfortunately, during this interaction and during the fulfillment of it, there is no branding element. Now then you have to create some
Hmm.
peripherals around it such that the brand can be fitted, right? Now that's an issue,
Right.
right? Now there are various ways of doing it. Suppose if there was a
Hmm.
brand that had created some kind of a signature tune or a signature step, right? Now if you
Hmm.
get everybody who comes to interact with the celebrity do the same thing with the celebrity, then you have a branded fulfillment,
Hmm.
right? So
Right.
it's a bad example, I know, but I'm just trying to make a point that your core,
It's
correct,
got to
your
link
core
back to the
premise
brand,
fulfillment
ideally.
has to got to link back to the brand. And then all of the loops that you're designing, please go ahead and design them, but please know that those are peripherals. Consumers might or might not go there. If they go there, well and good for you. If they don't, you will not have a consumer who got fulfilled but never got the brand. Yeah,
Can't be the
precisely.
opposite.
Precisely. And if you're able to go through all of this, not create a parallel universe and go through all the 4 steps, it is fairly likely that you will not create loopers, and hopefully you will not get into bloopers.
Good one.
Thank you, Sharan.
Thank you, Sudeep.
Thank you for listening to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan and Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net. That's CoBBcast.net.